Kids, we have been saying forever now that there is global warming happening, and we have even talked about global sea level rise. But obviously, when you average the globe and look at the warming, it gives you a sense that more energy is being trapped, and that's very important. But ultimately, everybody is living in some temperature that's not exactly the global warming temperature or the global average temperature. So why does warming happen differently at different places? You already know that. All we are trying to do still is we are trying to move energy from the lower latitudes to the polar latitudes because there is excess energy in the low latitudes and energy deficit at high latitudes. But this energy transport happens with winds. Winds force ocean currents. Oceans move heat in the ocean. Atmosphere moves that heat as well. Atmosphere doesn't hold much heat. Remember, it's very low heat capacity. So when you have this kind of a situation, you have heat capacity differences, land, ocean, you're melting glaciers, evaporating the oceans. Altogether, you will have temperature patterns. When you average over the whole globe, you get a temperature that's a global mean temperature, and that is increasing, which we call global warming. But these regional patterns matter. Why? Remember, the temperature at the surface also corresponds to pressure. Warm temperatures typically have low sea level pressure, and cold temperatures have higher sea level pressure. So if you have different temperatures from the warming, different levels of different magnitudes of warming, then you also set up pressure gradients. And remember, when you have a pressure gradient, you have winds going from high pressure to low pressure. Then obviously you have to add Coriolis, as you remember, and so on. So it's kind of a complicated dynamics, and yet knowing the patterns and how the dynamics of the atmosphere and ocean are distributing the heat and creating these warming patterns is very critical, because the local weather in response to global warming will depend on these local temperatures, local warming, local temperature gradient, local pressure gradient, and so on. Fortunately, we can see these from the satellites, and there are some places where there is no warming happening. In fact, cooling is happening, and it's one of those places where ocean can take up the heat as long as it keeps cooling or not warming as fast, and so on. So all these things matter. Global warming pattern is very important. Just remember that.